This time of year is my favorite time of year to be in Alaska, and it's nice to be back up here. Time to get this place situated a bit. Now, this is a cabin and a piece of property that it's sitting most of the year without anybody here. I'm only up in the summertime, so there's always stuff to do. One of the things I like to take care of first is to mow the driveway. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's one of the things. Also, to pull any trees that need to go. These guys need to go. Now, these alder trees, they will grow overnight, so it's a constant fight to keep them under control, if you know what I mean. One thing I would recommend, if you're going to have a remote cabin like this and you don't have power, the electric weed eater seems to be the best solution because you don't have to worry about the carburetor sitting with old gas getting gummed up. You just plug it into a generator, fire it up, and you cut as much grass as you want, you stick it back in the shed, and you forget you own it. This green alder burns really good too. Once you get a fire going, you can throw as many alders on as you want. And I think this little home light trimmer, I don't believe it costs $35, so it has been the solution. So for a tool like this that's going to sit all the time, or most of the time, I think this is the solution. Cheap, zero maintenance, when you need it, it's handy. Now, Brooke was up here a few weeks back, so she set up the rain barrel, which is great. One of the things that is most important on a hillside like this, where it's a couple hundred feet down to the water table, is to have water. Water for dishes, water for showers, whatnot. So the water barrel's the ticket. This time of year, the colors are just amazing. Now, these are all bunch berries. They just blanket the countryside around here. This time of year, you can also find a lot of low bush cranberries. They don't put on a color show like these bunch berries, but they're really good to eat. Now, it's been a year since I've been up, and the old cabin's held up just fine. Everything's right where I left it, and that's a good thing. Time to trim it up, though. The raspberry bushes are the problem in front of the cabin. They seem to like all the water that comes off the eave once the gutter's full. They seem to grow here as good as anywhere. Fireweed, raspberries, and alders if you wait too long. But it didn't take too long, and that's pretty much my fall chores in a nutshell. Time to go have some fun. Now, if there's one thing I like doing up here in Alaska this time of year, it's riding motorcycle. As long as you can stay warm enough. I loaded the bike up in the back of the truck, which was a hairy situation. Spent the next day riding roads and trails. I made it almost down to Tok, which is about 110 miles from the Canadian border, and then back up to Delta Junction, where I rode some trails up into some high ground, where I could get a really good view. Now, this particular area in the state of Alaska is a big valley between Fairbanks and Tok. And this valley's pretty flat, so when you find a good hill, you generally have a good view. There's the Alaska Range, there's the Granite Mountains. Just lovely. You get a good view down in the valley if you're around farmland where the trees are gone. You can see the mountains. Now, we lived down in this area for about 6 years, and we still have property here. That's where I'm going to spend the next day or so, and then Mickey and I are going to pack up and go down to Valdez. Mick lives about 8 miles from where I'm at right here at the moment. I would absolutely love to tell you all about this old camper, but I can't. That's a story for Brooke to tell. She bought this thing years and years ago, and it's got a lot of history. But she shot a video on that, so I'm absolutely not going to spoil it. I don't know what this camper is, what brand it is, what make it is. I drove it to the DMV 20 years ago to get tags for it because it didn't have a title, so we had to bond it and insure it. And it's kind of been around a bit. But I'll tell you what, sure is nice to have something, even if it's just a little something to stay in. The only problem with the camper is the radio don't work inside it. It's basically a gigantic radio frequency cage, so when I'm laying down at night, I have no radio. I have to turn it up real loud and stick it outdoors, point it into the window. Now you can see the colors are almost peak right now. The aspen trees, the spruce trees, these old fireweed plants. Mushrooms are out this time of year. This is absolutely my favorite time of the year to be in this part of the state. So what my plan for this evening is in the back of this property, there's a ridge. It goes way up high, and then there's a valley behind the ridge, and then it comes back up. The mountain view to the south is epic, but you can't see any of it from this property. So what I'm gonna try to do, I'm gonna try to get up on that ridge and try to maybe put the camera on a pole and see if I can see the mountain view. Because if I can, the aspen trees in the back, they could all get cut up for firewood. They're just very thin, they're very close together. It's more brush than trees. But if there's a great view back there, man, it would make this property a lot better. Nice clear skies out today. A little bit of clouds, so it's a good day to go take a look at the mountains. I generally keep a GoPro on my motorcycle. And it's got this clamp on it, and the clamp I can clamp onto anything. I could clamp it onto a pole saw, I could clamp it onto a chunk of tree branch, whatever. So it's going to be a good way to get a good look at what's up there and see if maybe if you built a house and had a second story with a walkout, well, maybe you'd be able to see the mountains. Now you guys remember this place. The off-grid survival bunker. That was so full of garbage and trash. Oh my goodness, this place was terrible. Interesting construction. Let's put it that way. Let's be kind and just say it's interesting. Because what it basically is stacked block, surface bonded, I believe, and then just parged with 10,000 layers of paint and maybe more mortar. It's gross. One of the questions I get asked all the time is, what are the plans for this building? What are you going to do with it? Well, let me tell you. People ask, what's the plans for this place? Honestly, the plan, as far as I'm concerned, is just to leave it alone and forget it exists. It would be a real disaster to tear it down. And it's kind of a disaster to leave it standing, too. It's the most unholy concoction of cement blocks, surface parged mortar, and latex paint. It's just gross. I think what you really need to take into consideration with a place like this is if you put a roof on it and you put doors on it, then you have an indoor space. Do you want to be in here? Somebody was here. Somebody had a stove in here and cots and all kinds of stuff, but I can't really imagine being here. Listen to this crunchy floor and ask yourself, why is it crunchy sounding? Well, there's no question it's interesting, but that's about all I'm going to say for it. Let's go up to the top of the hill and see if we can see the mountains. Now, walking through this section of the property, this black spruce forest where it's so dense, nothing grows underneath but sphagnum moss. Now, this type of country is just surreal. Surreal is the best word for it. Like, it's just kind of a one-of-a-kind ecosystem. But you pop out the backside and you've got this ridge on the property. On the top of this ridge, it's spruce trees, balsams. I brought a ladder up here earlier. Now, here's the plan. I'm going to get on this ladder and see if I can see anything, which, of course, I can't. So I'm going to take that camera and strap it to a pole, and we're going to see if we can get, a 20-foot view. Because if you could get 20 feet in the air and see the mountains, I'd build a 20-foot something. I don't know, a fire tower or something with a patio on top of it where you could climb up and sit there with a cup of coffee and look at the mountains. My hopes aren't high, but, the mountains are right back there. It's possible. All right. Let's see what there is to be seen up there. I like to think of this as sky mining. Prospecting for view property. I know the view's there, but is it attainable? Can we cut enough trees to see enough to make it worth doing? I don't know. Let's see what's on this thing. You know what's funny? Looking at this view, I can tell I had the camera pointed the opposite direction. There's what we're looking at. There's the other direction. And no mountains. Well, there's about 20,000 scrubby little bushy trees between the mountain view and the top of this hill. I'm going to go to the back of the property, put a pole up there, and see what I can see. Basically, there's a whole field of just scrub out there, and it goes out, I don't know, 3 miles or so to the Alaska highway. I'll go out there and put a pole up, see what I find. It's just handheld. There's the mountains. And over this way, they're great big 14,000 footers, 10,000 footers. They're snow-capped all year long. Can't see those. Can barely see these. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that hill back there on our property is high enough to really get a commanding view. I don't think it's any higher than this hill I'm standing on right now. Hard to say, but I think it'd be cutting a whole lot of trees trying to get a view and then have nothing. Well, that was kind of a bust. But I suppose I'm going to sit around a campfire for a couple hours, have a good dinner, get ready, and tomorrow morning, Mickey and I are going to head down to Valdez, do a little bit of sightseeing. Last couple nights, the aurora has been fantastic. Northern lights are out, I don't know, about midnight on average the last few days. Just beautiful. But it's starting to cloud up, and there's not going to be any northern lights tonight, so I'm going to make my own. Beauty. The other night, I heard a whole bunch of coyotes out back, just over top of the ridge, and there was a couple big dogs back there. I think a couple dogs had the coyotes tucked down underneath a log or something, and they couldn't get out. I was thinking of going back there, but then realized that's a stupid idea. Well, morning came quick, and now it's time to load up on fat and grease. I've been called out several times for eating a lot of breakfast meats on this channel, but honestly, the last year I've really laid off bread, and I have asthma, and my asthma's been a lot better, and my allergies have been non-existent. So go figure. Driving the back roads between my property and Mickey's, I ran into this guy. Check him out. This little guy is trucking, man. And here's what you could be looking at if you could see over the trees on our property. Absolutely beautiful. Later on that morning, Mickey and I were headed down to Valdez. This is Summit Lake, Alaska. They say can't be done. This is the area just south of Delta Junction, and I think between Delta Junction and Summit Lake is probably the prettiest stretch of the entire highway system in Alaska. If you're here at the right time of the year and check this creek, there's always salmon in here. Right now, not so much. Good to get a good look at him. Yes, you're so sweet. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. The highlight of any trip to Valdez is to go over by the fish weir, because there's always sea lions, they're always doing stuff, and you can be right there next to them. And they are a blast. Hi, son.
Where you going?
Hi.
Leave me alone. What did I wait, Dad? I'm watching the beauty of nature. Gosh, leave me alone.
We sat and hung out around this guy for, I don't know, probably a half an hour. We named him Dale. He's just sitting in the chute there at the fish hatchery, We never saw him catch a fish. He just seemed to like to own the space and to keep everybody else out of it.
We both saw that fish at the same time. Tensions ran high, and there was violence.
The next day we decided to go on a glacier tour. Now this is Stan Stevens tours. They've been around forever. But none of us have ever taken a tour out to see the glaciers. It's like a 6-hour round trip. It's about 90 miles by water. And they take you out to where the glaciers are meeting the ocean. Now all summer long these glaciers are calving off into the water. So there's just blocks of ice everywhere. We saw some big chunks fall off, but you know, I suppose if you were out here all the time, you'd get to see some pretty epic things. Because these ice walls are massive. There's really no way to get the scale into the camera. Just monstrous. I bet those arches are 30 feet high. The boat ride was awesome, but it's warm, and with the engine vibration, we both slept a little bit on the way back. Well, back in Fairbanks a couple days later, and I think it's time to actually do something with myself and get something done. Now these steps have been here since I put them there. I like to call this floor system 2 logs sitting right on the dirt. And although it's been something to step on for 6 years, I think it's time for something a little bit better. And this is one of the 50,000 projects that's been on my list for quite a while that I haven't got to. So I think today's a good time to do it. What I think I'm going to do is build a landing. Probably 3 foot by 4 foot. Just something that's a solid step where you can stand there and open the door and you don't have a big 9 or 10 inch rise, which is what it was. If you were standing on those old rotten logs, it was between 10 inches and a foot to get in the house, and that's just too high for a step. So we're going to take a little bit of time today. We're going to build ourselves a step. Not a set of steps. We're going to build a step. Just one big step. I'd like to note the drill I'm using is an old Makita. It's a gear reduction drill, and it will twist your arm right off. It's got so much torque. And when you take your finger off the trigger, it still keeps spinning for about another second or two. So it is a real pain in the neck to drive screws with. You know, I have a nice little drill that would work so much better for this, but I think somebody called my son came and stole it for his projects. So I'm stuck with this dinosaur. We'll make it work. You can see the view from the cabin's really not that bad. I could stand to lose a few of these trees. It'd make it better. I'm going to make a mark down from the threshold so it's the same height on both sides. And we'll do the best we can to work with the space that we have. I'm going to use these duplex nails to just kind of temporarily set this thing in place. That's what I was afraid of. That's kind of what I was afraid of. This is the natural soil. Here's a rock. There's a rock over here. You see there's a rock, there's a rock. This whole hillside is basically just right over top of the bedrock. Where I put the outhouse in, it's probably 5 feet down to bedrock. But up here on the side of the hill, I mean, there's bedrock right there. One good thing is the ground is really solid. Bad thing is everywhere you dig, it's just nothing but rocks. There's not a ton of overlap where the porch, this landing, is going to meet the sill plate. So I'm going to have to get a little creative. I'm going to set these blocks in here so I can nail them off to the step, and then they're going to sit right on the concrete footings. And then the best I can, I'll screw off this landing framing to that rim joist. Of every cabin that I've ever built in my life, or house for that matter, This one took the most out of me. Every one of these logs was a tree on this property. A tree that I cut down, cut into log lengths, two-sided with a chainsaw, packed up the side of the mountain on my shoulder when they were green and wet and ultra heavy. And honestly, it took away a lot of my love for building. So now I like to do projects just a little bit at a time. I'll do a landing this year. I'll put the last window in next year, maybe. And in that manner, I can still kind of keep my sanity, enjoy the process of building, and, you know, not get burned out. Because this cabin burned me out. I was pouring concrete 5 days a week. On evenings and weekends, my time was spent logging and milling logs. And, man, it was just too much. So now, I think a little at a time is the best way to go. About an hour, we got a porch, patio, deck, step, landing.
Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. This is what it looks like when I'm editing a video. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video and a little bit of behind the scenes, what it's actually like up in Alaska this time of year. Getting to some projects, being a tourist for a minute. I had a good time. I hope you guys did too. My name's Dave Whipple. You've been watching Bushradical. Be radical, eh? See you soon.